All right, I'm in the Gospel of John. Gospel of John, I'm going to be in verses 15 down to maybe verse 24, 25. I might speak a little bit about verse 26, but this is where I'm at in this particular message. This has to do with the situation when Jesus walked on water, and that was a big deal. That was a really big deal. In order to present this well, I need to spend a little bit of time to just review what happened just before he walked on water so that you can have an appreciation for why he did it. And this has to do with Jesus feeding the 5,000, the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000. There really were somewhere between 15 to 20,000 people altogether. It was listed as about 5,000 men, but there were also women and children who were there as well. All right, so let me review a little bit from the beginning of John chapter 6, just to be able to get the greater context. What was going on was that Jesus had sent his disciples out on their missionary journey before this. He sent them out on the missionary journey whereas they would go and they would proclaim the gospel of the kingdom. They would cast out demons, heal people who were sick, things like that. Jesus gave them divine authority to be able to perform some signs and to speak about him. So they had gone out into the nation in order to do this. And when they returned, Jesus effectively took them on a vacation. He took them across the Sea of Galilee into an area that was not really under the influence of the Pharisees so much. All right, this was a region in Bethsaida where there just wasn't a lot of religious influence. There was not a lot of conflict that they would expect to experience there. And they went to a deserted place, an area where there was nothing more than a bunch of rocks and some grass. And they were out there in order to take a break, is what they were there for. They went out there just to take a break and to refresh themselves and recover, maybe tell stories about the adventures that they had. But word got out, somehow word got out that the people on the other side of Galilee, they found out that Jesus and his disciples had gone over there. So there were about 5,000 men who collectively assembled together, wives and kids, and they went over there. They went a significant distance to go over to this deserted area to find Jesus. All right, knowing that he and his disciples had gone over there, and it was probably known that they were over there to take a break, but all these people went over to this region. When they got there, there were people who were sick or had infirmities of some kind. And so Jesus went ahead and healed them by their request. And when they were there, they did not have much food to eat. So at a certain point, his disciples, Jesus' disciples, told him, hey, look, you just need to send these people away because obviously they're getting hungry and there isn't any food here for them. So you need to just send them off. And he decided to perform the miracle of feeding them, okay? But what this really was a manipulation by the people. The people knew that they were in a deserted area. That's where they went to. They knew that they didn't have enough food to eat. They didn't bring it with them. And it wasn't readily available in the surrounding area. And so we're dealing with a people, okay? This is important to see that in this particular example, in this situation, what you really have is you have a large group of people, 15 to 20,000 people who are present, who are all involved in a manipulation against Jesus. And this type of manipulation kind of fits in the category of extortion, that they are effectively extorting Jesus in a sense. because they have intentionally put themselves in a situation where they need a divine response. They have intentionally put themselves in a scenario where they're going to be hungry, and it is going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for them to acquire food. It's obviously late in the day, and they're going to have to go somewhere. It's going to get dark soon. They have intentionally, purposefully put themselves in a circumstance where they are in need. They are in need of someone else to supply them with food. And they have done this intentionally, knowing that Jesus could perform a miracle and provide them with food. Now, knowing that he can perform a miracle and provide them with food, what happens if he doesn't do this? Okay, if he doesn't do this, well, then he's going to look bad. All right, he's going to look like he's no good. What kind of a God is this? Okay, this is the attitude of the people that, well, hey, if this is the divine presence, if Jesus can do miracles, if he's God who can do the works of God, then, all right, well, here we are. Go ahead and feed us. Okay, and if he doesn't do that, then they can look down on him in a way. They can say that he's not such a good God. He's not such a good Messiah, because here's all his people who are in desperate need, especially the children who are there, and they're going to starve. They're hungry. You can tell how irritable they are. Please feed the children, right? And of course, we're here too, the adults, and so you got to feed us by default. That's how people can be. And in this circumstance, the situation is that either Jesus provides them with food, or he's going to look bad. But it's more than that. It's more than that. You see, they were there, and he healed them. Some of them who needed to be healed. So these are people who provided him with someone to heal. Obviously, if they needed a healing, they probably needed some assistance in being able to make the journey to get there as well. So there were a lot of people who were quite likely involved in providing Jesus with this service. They did a service for Jesus. This is how people think, okay? They think, we did something for you, Jesus. We have given you people to heal. That's what we've done. So you healed them, and we provided this service. Therefore, we expect to be compensated. We expect some compensation for the service that we provided you. We provided you with people to heal. And he might say, well, I healed these people. And they say, oh, that's not good enough. No, that's not enough. You see, we provided you with the people to heal, so you healed them. So now, because we made you look so good, now you owe us. And so, okay, so if he owes you, well, it turns out that we're kind of hungry. We're getting hungry. Our kids are hungry. Our wives are hungry. So, because of that, here's an opportunity for you to feed us miraculously. Do a miracle, And so he does a miracle, and I explained this in the previous message, that he provides them with barley loaves and fish. And so they eat, okay? So they have provided him with an opportunity to do a miracle. So feeding them is something that he did, and the people provided him with people to feed. That's what they did. That's their service. That's what they've done. They provided him with people to feed, so now he's done the miracle. And now he looks pretty good. They could probably say he owes us more. And this is how a lot of people, I have encountered people like this. All right, there are people who the more you do for them, all right, the more you do for them, the more they will say that you are indebted to them because they provided you with the service of someone that you could be generous to. All right. I know this might, for some of you, this might sound a little distorted and twisted, but there are a lot of people who are distorted and twisted, and I personally know people like this, that this is how they relate to others. And so I genuinely believe that this is how these people were relating to Jesus. Okay, that this is how they were relating to him. And this is a manipulation. It is an exercise of dishonesty. It is manipulation. And it is also, because of the nature of extortion, it is a form of force. All right, that's what it is. It is a form of force. It is a subtle form, but it still fits in the category of people forcing others to do things for them. Okay? So after Jesus did this, right now, there's a new way to look at Jesus. Jesus is now, if I may use the illustration of the golden goose, or the goose who lays the golden eggs, what you have here now you have Jesus, who is the goose who lays the golden barley loaves. All right, that's what you've got. You've got Jesus, the goose, who will lay the golden barley loaves. All right, let's seize him. All right, let's seize him and make him our prisoner. All right, make him our prisoner. And so therefore, he cannot get away from us. He cannot escape. And don't worry, we'll make sure that we're hungry. We'll make sure that we don't do anything in order to provide food for ourselves or for our wives or for our children or whomever. We'll make sure we don't do that, and so that Jesus will, of course, have to feed us because he is our prisoner. He is our goose. He's going to give us the golden barley loaves. And if he doesn't, well, we could maybe escalate the force a little bit more. All right, so the manipulation was a subtlety of force through extortion. Now they're threatening to escalate their exercise of force by seizing him and making him a prisoner. But they're not going to call him a prisoner. They're going to call him the king. All right, that's what they're going to do. That's verse 15. Therefore, when Jesus perceived that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he departed again to the mountain by himself alone. All right? They were going to take him by force and make him king. But why? And for what? Well, because he was going to solve the problems of life. He was going to provide them with food. And he decided he did not want to participate in that kind of relationship at all. All right? And you might find this to be a little peculiar. There he is, and he's got an audience. People who he's healed, people who were willing to sit and listen to him talk, right? They provided him the service with giving him someone to listen to, that they were listening to him. And they were using their time, and to the extent where they were not getting food for themselves, he owes them, right, the compensation. All right, and he has decided that he is not going to participate in this relationship that they now want to have with him. But the attraction could be appealing, right? Because here he's got 15 to 20,000 people, a force of men of about 5,000. Now this is a lot of guys, all right? A lot of guys. You got an army, okay? You've got an army. Not only do you have that, but one of the greatest challenges that an army has in order to be effective is how are you going to feed the troops, And hey, you got the goose who lays the golden barley loaves right here with you. Provide all the abundance of food that the army needs, all the logistics necessary. They can definitely wage war. So they are kind of on the outskirts of Israel, on the outskirts. And they can seize Jesus and make him king, right? And you've got a mega church by today's standards, and there were not as many people back then. There's a lot of people today, and we would consider 15 to 20,000 people to be a mega church. And so Jesus has got his mega church, all right? And he's got his army. And people are willing to embrace him and seize him by force if necessary in order to make him king. So what happens next? Next, they're going to go and effectively invade Israel. They're going to invade Israel. They're in a region that's not so much influenced by the religious leaders, but they'll assemble together, they'll get organized, and then they will make their way. They will make their way over to Israel and even over to Jerusalem. Passover is coming up pretty soon. And with 5,000 men fully fed with an abundance of food provided by their king, hey, they can go in, they can conquer the region, and Jesus can be the king who he's supposedly supposed to be. And so what does he do? He says, no, we're not going to do it this way. This is not the way. This is not what he's going to do. And I think it's quite obvious, it's quite clear that the main reason why he did not want to participate in this at all was because, for the most part, the people who were there wanted him to be a part of their lives only, really, because of the miracles that he would do for them, because of the food that he would give them, because he would heal them if they were sick, things like that. They were not interested in having a personal relationship with him. They just wanted him to be their local, miracle worker and put him in charge to solve all the problems, and they'll provide him with lots of problems to solve. All right? So the people, 15 to 20,000 people who were there, they wanted to have a certain kind of relationship with Jesus, and Jesus was unwilling to have that kind of relationship with them. All right? Now, I want to point out that he did perform these miracles. He did. And he did provide them with food. He did all of that. Okay? Knowing that this was their attitude. And so if he does that today, if he does that tomorrow, he's certainly free to do that, even when people relate to him on the basis of extortion. Okay? But like any relationship with anybody, do you really think that Jesus is going to go along with that for long? Sure, he might do that, as people relate to him in that way. And maybe he'll respond. But that doesn't mean this is going to last very long. Okay, in this case, for these people, this kind of relationship was really short because Jesus didn't really want to have that kind of a relationship with them. So he exited the relationship that they were trying to impose on him. He exited the relationship. All right? He went off to the mountain by himself to be alone. That's what it says in verse 15. He departed again to the mountain by himself alone. He didn't take his disciples with him. I'll tell you what he had them do in just a moment. And you might think that, well, that sounds so lonely. He went alone by himself. When he's got a 15 to 20,000 member megachurch, and it goes off to nowhere by himself, alone. But folks, he was already alone. Okay, in fact, it was worse than being alone. And this is important to see. Okay, that when he was with 15 to 20,000 people who were in his life for reasons that he didn't want to have anything to do with, to him, that was already being in a state of being by himself and being alone. Yes, you can be in the presence of 15 to 20,000 people who look up to you in this way, who will listen to anything that you have to say, who will make you king and do whatever you order them to do. But you will be more alone than you would be if you just go by yourself to some mountain somewhere that is very unappealing to go hang out around. Okay? And so Jesus went by himself, but he was already by himself. Okay? He was around 15 to 20,000 people who would listen to whatever he had to say and were asking him to solve problems, but he was by himself because he was not willing to have this kind of relationship with them that they wanted to have with him. So he went off alone? Well, hey, that's better than being alone with all of these people. Okay, now perhaps some of you can relate to this. Maybe you have people in your life who relate to you in this way. That your only purpose is to provide them with whatever they need or whatever they desire. That's what your role is in their life. That's what your purpose is in their life. Do they have any concern for how you feel? For what you genuinely think? For what you believe? For who you are? For what you value? For the goals that you intend to accomplish in your life? Do they have any concern for that? Absolutely not. In fact, they will soon relate to you in the context of if you intend to do anything besides take care of them, you can only do so by their permission. Oh, yes, absolutely. That's how they're going to relate to you. Okay? And we'll see that as we continue to read and see what happens in the conversation at Capernaum with these people. That's exactly how they relate to him. You came over here without our permission. Is effectively how they're communicating to him. Okay, so if someone wants to relate to you on this basis, here's the question. How long do you think it would take before you feel alone? All right? And how long do you think it would take before you feel like you really are just all by yourself? Okay, and so to exit that kind of a relationship is nothing more than acknowledging the reality that there is no relationship. Or at least the one that exists is one that you definitely don't want to have any part in. All right? So Jesus escaped. They were about to force him. All right? To force him. And yes, people will relate to others this way. If this person won't give to me the things that I want, don't worry. I'll find a way to force that person to give me whatever I want. That's what they were doing to him. So he escapes. He leaves. He gets out of the way. No, I'm not going to be a part of this. I'm going to escape. I will flee. Absolutely. That's what Jesus did. Okay, in order to acknowledge the reality of the way things really were. But he doesn't take his disciples with him. He sends them off ahead of him on the boat. He says, no, don't come with me. Off into the mountain. I'm going to go by myself, probably because it would be easier for him to hide without having an additional 12 people or so along with him. But mainly what he was doing is he was sending them to the water, to the boat, all right? And all the people there would be able to see and they would watch. They would keep an eye out because remember, they're trying to take him by force. And so they cannot let Jesus escape. Okay? They cannot let Jesus escape. So Jesus sends the disciples to the boat. And they take the boat and go into the water. They go into the sea by themselves without Jesus. And the people could easily let the disciples go because it was Jesus who performed the miracle and they were really after Jesus. The disciples were not such a big deal. So the disciples left with the boat. Now, this would tell those people that Jesus cannot escape by water. He can't escape by boat because the boat's gone. The disciples took the boat. They left. So he can't easily escape by sea. All right? So what were the disciples to Jesus? They were the decoys. Okay? That's what they were. The disciples were the decoys to make the people believe that Jesus would not be escaping by water. And so all they have to do now is cover the land exits. That's all they need to do. Just cover the land exits, the trails and the regions, and make sure that they keep a visual eye out, and so that, through their scouts and whomever, they can be sure that Jesus can't easily escape. Because remember, they want to capture him and imprison him, seize him, call him king. They could call him whatever they want to call him. But either way, they want to seize him by force, and he is not interested in being a participant in that kind of a relationship. So he has no way out from their point of view. They're keeping an eye out. They're staying there in the middle of absolute nowhere. They're still there. Okay, where's the food? It's not there. All right, that's what these people are doing. I'm sure some of them might be thinking, well, maybe we should go too. I mean, who knows if we're going to be able to eat later today, or tomorrow? Who knows? Maybe we should be thinking about getting, if we're going to get hungry, or if our kids are going to get hungry. And I'm sure that there were people saying, no, don't leave, because Jesus is still somewhere around here. And when he shows up, as long as we're hungry, he'll feed us. And if he doesn't, then, we'll call him a bad person. He definitely is not worthy of being the king of Israel or the Messiah. We'll extort money. We'll extort golden barley loaves out of him. That's what we're going to do. So don't leave. Go hungry. Be hungry. Everybody suffer. And keep an eye out for Jesus, because he's going to try to slip by. He's going to try to slip past. All right? The disciples left with the boat, so it's all by land. That's the scenario. All right? So in verse 16, now when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into the boat, and went over the sea toward Capernaum. And it was already dark, and Jesus had not come to them. Then the sea arose because a great wind was blowing. So when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and drawing near the boat. And they were afraid. Why? Because he didn't tell them. He didn't tell them that he was going to escape 15 to 20,000 people by walking across the water. He didn't tell them that. Word could have leaked out. Just like word seemed to have leaked out so that the people knew that Jesus and his disciples were over in this deserted area for a vacation. Well, this time let's use some secrecy and not tell the disciples how Jesus is going to escape these people. You guys just go ahead and get in the boat and go. All right, so they get in the boat and they go, and I'm sure people were probably interrogating the disciples. What do you know? Where's Jesus? How is he going to get to you? We don't know. We don't know anything. He said he's going over there. He said just take the boat and go over to Capernaum. That's where we're going. And so they would not have any information to disclose. They wouldn't be able to report anything. They wouldn't be able to share anything with those people. So when Jesus is showing up, they're going to be surprised. They're going to be afraid. Look, there's Jesus. He's walking on water. It is like 3 or 4 miles. I mean, we're talking miles of water. Miles of water. All right? I mean, a lot. And the weather's bad. And it's dark out. It's night. Right? And he's walking. This is how determined Jesus is to get away from these people. All right? We've made all kinds of jokes and lots of humor, and people have asserted all kinds of things about Jesus has to be God because he walked on water. And I don't want to take away from any of those things. But folks, the reason why Jesus walked on water was so that he could escape 15 to 20,000 people who wanted to have a relationship with him for the wrong reasons. Again, Jesus walked on water so that he could escape 15 to 20,000 people who wanted to have a relationship with him that he didn't want to have with them. He didn't want to have that kind of a relationship. So he's willing to go to that extreme, to that extent, in order to get away from these people. Okay? And you probably could relate to this in many different ways because you probably know that there are a lot of people in the world who have lived, who are alive now, and who will be alive in the future, who will relate to God in the same way, who will turn to him, who will seek him because they want to have a certain kind of relationship with him that he doesn't necessarily want to have with them. And this is a good example to show just how far God will go in order to avoid having a relationship with others outside of the boundaries of what he's willing to do, of what he's really interested in. Okay? God would rather be alone. He would rather be by himself than have people in his life who relate to him in a way that he doesn't like. Okay? Again, we have a God who would rather be by himself, he would rather be alone than have a relationship with people that he's just not interested in. And so you better take seriously the subject of a relationship with God. And you better think seriously about the kind of relationship that God is willing to have with you. Because if you are outside of those boundaries concerning the kind of relationship that he would like to have with you, if you're relating to him in the context of you want to impose on him a relationship that you want him to have, it could be, all right? It could be, and maybe not right away, but it could be at certain points and in a certain way and at certain levels that he would just rather be by himself and be alone than to have you in his life. Okay? We have a God who would rather be by himself and be alone than to have someone like you or someone like these other people in his life. Okay? And it's not about sin, in the sense of are you perfect or are you not perfect. It doesn't have to do with how evil you may be or you may not be. It doesn't have to do with how obedient you are to his commandments. It has nothing to do with that at all. He has demonstrated that clearly through the gospel, through the subject of forgiveness, through the subject of freedom from the law, through the inheritance in Christ Jesus, through all that we know about the basics and the fundamentals of the gospel and the relationship that he has offered to us. We know that it is not really a topic of sin. It is a topic of person to person, okay, and a relationship between one person and another. Who is God to you? Who is he to you? And who are you to him? All right? I mean, you need to think about these things, or at least it's helpful to think about these things. Because in this example, I can see just how far God is willing to go to not be a participant in these things. And I think about this with myself quite a bit. I do. I think about myself and I wonder, on occasion, am I the kind of person who God would walk on water to get away from? Am I really? And what would be that criteria? Is it because I got a lot of sin? Well, he and I both know that I've got a lot of sin, and he knows that I would like these things to change, and he knows what kinds of changes that I'll need to go through, and what kind of growth I'll need to go through, or what would need to be different in order to go through that. That's not the issue. The issue is how do I relate to him? How do I see him? Why do I want to be in his life? Why do I want him to be in my life? And the reasons don't have to be the same for me as they are for you. It doesn't have to be, we have this specific list of criteria concerning what is the defined acceptable relationship. I don't think that's an appropriate way to pursue this. I think that this needs to be general and open-ended because it is personal. As soon as we try to come up with a defined set of criteria to see if we satisfy things, then we have entered the realm of the theological, and we've entered into the realm of the collective, instead of remembering the personal relationship and the individual. All right? So try not to go too far with this. I'm just explaining the reason why he walked on water. And in this particular circumstance, it was to get away from people who wanted to have a relationship with him that he wasn't willing to have with them. Right? And so, it takes two persons to have a relationship. Both people have to be participants. Both people have to agree. And there may be a lot of people who think that they have a relationship with God according to their standards, their criteria, and what they're willing to do, but it may not be compatible with our God and what he is willing to do. So what happens next? Right? All right, so in verse 20, but he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." Then they willingly received him into the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land where they were going. All right, now the other writers had a lot more to say about what happened when Jesus was getting in the boat and, Peter going out and walking on the water with him and stuff. The other writers have got more to say about this situation. But in this case, what John recorded, in my opinion, just emphasizes the importance of Jesus being a part, him having an opinion, and that it matters. That Jesus, our God, needs to have the freedom, and he still has the choice and the freedom and the ability to decide what kind of relationship he's willing to have with another person. Okay, going into verse 22. On the following day, when the people who were standing on the other side of the sea saw that there was no other boat there except that one which his disciples had entered, and that Jesus had not entered the boat with his disciples, but his disciples had gone away alone. However, other boats came from Tiberias, near the place where they ate bread after the Lord had given thanks. And the subject of giving thanks and stuff I'll be able to talk about a little bit more later. I'm skipping that for now. In verse 24, when the people therefore saw that Jesus was not there, nor his disciples, they also got into boats and came to Capernaum, seeking Jesus. And when they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, "Rabbi, when did you come here?" All right? So what do? Right? They go and they find out where he went, okay, because other boats came and they probably reported to the people, well, yeah, Jesus is over in Capernaum. So they now they go and hunt him down in Capernaum. All right, now they're going to go on another journey. Obviously, they're going to be hungry when they get there. Right? And they go on another journey and go hunt him down, and they ask him this question, "When did you come here? When did you come here?" All right? Now, I'll tell you what this really means, okay? What this really means is, how dare you come here without our permission? Okay? That's really what they mean. They mean, how dare you come here without our permission? And by the way, we're hungry. Just like we were before. So you thought you could get away from us, right? Yeah, well, we're back, okay? We're back. But this time, Jesus doesn't give them lunch. He doesn't lay the golden barley loaves in front of them, all right? He doesn't do that. This time, he responds to them differently. And yet they still push at him. You keep reading. They push at him. They press him. "Oh, yes, you're going to give us food. Yes, you are. We're going to stick with you. We are going to be in your way until you feed us. We are we are going to interfere in your life in whatever way is necessary until you give us food, because that's who you are to us. That's what he's got, and he doesn't do it. All right? He doesn't do it. In verse 26, Jesus answered them and said, "Most assuredly I say to you, you seek me not because you saw the signs, but because you ate of the loaves and were filled." Okay, so you really got three categories here. You've got the signs, you've got the food, and you've got Jesus. Those could be considered to be three different categories. Jesus provided the sign because he wanted them to know him, because he wanted them to have a relationship with him according to what he is willing to have. All right? So he didn't perform the signs just to do signs. He did the signs for a reason, and that was to give them some evidence to show that he was someone who they should take seriously and get to know. But instead, all that they were interested in was the food. They didn't even care so much whether it was a sign or not, whether it was divine or not. Just feed us. All right? So he expresses to them that they were not interested in the signs, but the signs by themselves were not the real issue either. The real issue was that what the signs would lead them to, which was to have a proper, sound, healthy, appropriate relationship with him for who he really is and for what he came to do for them. Instead, all they want is the food. And he effectively tells them, look, I am not going to have that kind of relationship with you, is what he effectively says. Sure, he provided them with that the day before. Fine. Okay? Yeah, so he did that. That was nice. But he's not going to do it anymore. And they can say whatever they want to say about him. So instead of them showing up and they ask him, oh gosh, when did you get here? He doesn't say, excuse me, I'm sorry, would you like to have lunch with me? He doesn't say that. He says, in effect, go get your own food. Just go get your own food. All right? That's what he says. Most assuredly, I say to you, you seek me, not because you saw the signs, but because you ate of the loaves and were filled. Now, I'll get into this again in the next message, a little bit more into verse 27 as well. I really like verse 27 because of the way he says it. It says, do not labor for the food which perishes, but for the food which endures to everlasting life, which the Son of Man will give you, because God the Father has set his seal on him. Okay? He effectively says, look, I am here to give you everlasting life. And that's a big package. It's a package that also includes having a personal interactive relationship with your God. There's a lot to this package of eternal life. But he says that is what he is offering. That is what he wants to give. He says, do not labor for the food which perishes. And he says, in a symbolic way, there is another kind of food that I have to offer which has to do with eternal life and all that that represents and includes. That is what you should be laboring for. That is what you should be working for. But they're not even laboring for the food which perishes. I think that's quite interesting in verse 27. He's being polite. He's being kind. I don't know that I would necessarily have that kind of attitude with most people. But he did. He says, do not labor for the food which perishes, when they weren't even doing that. They weren't laboring for the food which perishes. You think that being in the presence of Jesus is work? Listening to him is work? Giving up your day is work? following him around, hunting him down from one city to the next, that's work through which now he owes you payment? He owes you payment of food because you did that work of hunting him down and finding him? Now he owes you? What kind of work are we talking about? Go get a job, all right? Get a job. Go do some work. That's what subtly I think that's what he was communicating to them. Do not labor for the food which perishes. Oh, but we both know you're not even doing that. Okay. But if you're going to do any work, do that, and also labor, because it is effort. It does require effort to pursue your God, to grow in your understanding of who he is and what he has to offer. There's some labor, there's some effort involved in that. You have to give up some comfort, perhaps. It requires some time out of your life. I can understand that. Okay, but that is what he is describing, is he's describing the effort that you should put in to pursue him, because he wants a person who will pursue him with that kind of an effort. He wants people in his life who want to be in his life. And this is a way to know that you want to be in his life. This is a way that he can know. He can know that you want to be in his life because you put out work. You put out effort. You do put out sincerity to discover more about who he is, what he thinks, what's important to him, how does he feel, what is he involved in, how can you maybe participate, those kinds of things, how there may be a relational experience between you and him as a person in a way that he feels comfortable with, in a way that he would like to have, something that is not so much surrounded by the temporary issues that we can be consumed with easily, but that have to do with the eternal matters, the eternal concerns, those things that won't just disappear when you physically die. What about those things that will remain eternally? Okay, these issues with regards to healing the body, putting food in it, all that stuff is going to go away. All right, that is not eternal life. That's temporary life. The eternal issues are the ones that will often require a different kind of effort, a different kind of work in order to pursue our God. And those are the kinds of people who he wants to have in his life. What's going to be left when you physically die? All right, what's going to be left? If you look to your God, if you get started in this way, I don't want you to feel bad or feel condemned necessarily. All right, whatever it takes to get a person started with their relationship with God, whatever it is, we should be thankful. If you want to pursue God just because you want to be healed, or you want someone who's close to you to be healed, if that's what it takes to get you started, then by all means, If you pursue your God because you're hungry and that's why you're pursuing him, then by all means, go ahead and pursue him under that context. But it's not going to last. All right? It's not going to last. You're going to have to pursue him for the right reasons later, hopefully sooner than later. But eventually there's going to have to be other reasons why you continue to pursue him, why you want him to be in your life. And these things that people usually start with, which, it's good to at least have a start. These things that people start with normally have to do exclusively with the flesh, with things that are soon going to pass away. And they will be forgotten. They will not be remembered. All right, these things are not eternal in nature. There are other things. So when your flesh is gone and you go into the presence of God, it would be good to see that there are some things that actually make it that far. All right? That actually make it that far. You're not going to physically die. Go before your God in the kingdom of heaven and ask him, Lord, can I have a few loaves of barley and some fish? That's not likely going to be why you are there, in order to collect some golden barley loaves and some fish. That's probably not what you're going to do there, all right? So please remember that there are other things, that there are more important things, and to continually relate to your God in that context, asking him to help you to grow in your understanding of these things, to explain these things to you in ways that you can appreciate, that you can understand, that can establish a connection between you and him, that you know what your relationship is about presently, and you know what you would like to see more in the future that may not be present now, but things that you would like to experience later, the kind of connection you would like to have with him in the near future. All right, things like that are individual experiences that we all have personally with him. Okay, so I'm going to stop here and I'll continue again with verse 26 and beyond in the next message. All right, I have a question for you, for those of you who are in some small groups, something that you can perhaps use as a discussion question to just kind of get things going. What first drew you to Jesus? What was going on in your life that was important to you, that motivated you to pursue a knowledge or a relationship with your God? Whatever it is, And it's probably something that is not so important today. And I think that's a good thing to talk about and a good thing to discover, that the reasons why you started may not be the same reasons as to what you have right now. And that is a good thing. And to help and to appreciate those things as a way of understanding where other people are at in their story and in their lives, that there are other people who are pursuing him for reasons that are probably not so good. But, at least there's something. And you have a knowledge of either yourself or of others who have followed a similar path. But, it's not so much about how you start. It's about the journey that you go on, and it's about the destinations and the milestones that you reach, right? So I think that's a good question to consider, what first drew you to Jesus, as a discussion point concerning these things. All right? Thank you.